It was the final day and much had already been said and agendas set out. But from the European Union there was a final reminder that the challenges ahead are multidimensional and that as a bloc it recognised the need for more rather than less engagement.
For Europe to continue to grow, to sustain the level of prosperity, it's important that we are connected to this global growth, and for this we need open trade and investment.
Climate change dominated the 2021 forum. Nevertheless, a display of determination by the Prime Minister of Japan for a green and digital future was welcomed.
Regarding the electrified vehicles, by 2035, we will achieve 100% of electrified vehicles amongst the new passenger vehicle sales. And Japan will present an ambitious objective for 2030 before COP26.
The theme this year had been the Great Reset, a sustainable rebuild after COVID. But it was the resetting of geopolitics that aired some of the week's most memorable positions from a panel of experienced international diplomats.
My observation is that the current new U.S. administration needs time to estimate what are the areas it has to cooperate with China, and what are the areas it needs to manage with China, avoiding conflicts. And for the Chinese side, I think we also need to reflect and observe what is the intention, what is the next move.
You know, the world is a very complicated place, and reality is not clean cut. I always say reality is very messy. And I think the job of leaders at national level and global levels is to manage that messiness and find solutions that are beneficial to all. Win-win, understand each other, and try to find ways that are beneficial to all sides.
The challenges declared this week couldn't be greater. There was plenty of consensus, although no guarantees that long-term agreements would follow. Andrew Wilson, CGTN.
Well, as outlined in that report, discussions on day 5 revolved around trade and geopolitics and the 3 Cs that have defined Davos 2021: COVID, climate and cooperation. I spoke to campaigning environmentalist Ma Jun about how far this week has gone towards setting the climate agenda for the year ahead.
Far more hopeful than, say, half a year ago, because at that time it looks, I have to say, it used to look pretty gloomy, because at that time either the U.S. withdrew from the Paris Agreement, and many other industrialized countries were not willing to come up to solid actions, and China, which suffered from an economic slowdown and pandemic hit, also have seen a rebound of carbon emission at that time. So it didn't look very promising. But then, you know, EU enhanced its commitment, and then President Xi represents China to make the historic carbon neutrality pledge, followed by Korea and then Japan, and the Biden presidency have brought the U.S. back to the Paris Agreement.
Now, the World Economic Founder said that 2021 is going to be a crucial year for mankind. It's been there have been many big changes, not least the relationship between the United States and China. Where do you think we should be pitching our expectations when it comes to that relationship and the climate story?
The past 4 years, I have to say, was some painful experience, because almost like in any international gatherings and events, in any kind of a international policy-making process, we could see that when the U.S. representative entered the room, all the others have to shut down about any discussions about anything related to environment and climate, because it was just simply not, tolerated, accepted. So that was really painful, and we lost 4 years, and And during these 4 years, our climate situation is getting worsened, and now we have a much shorter time to really try to enhance our action.
So let's look ahead to the G7, to COP26. What needs to happen?
What needs to happen is really for all the countries to try to integrate all this commitment into solid, economic and social political planning and strategy, and to, all the countries, it is a common challenge for all the countries to try to transform their energy supply, manufacturing, and transportation and consumption into a zero carbon model. I mean, this is highly challenging, and because the zero carbon commitment is a long process, between 30 to sometimes 50 years away from now. So we have to, create all the milestones for the short-term and mid-term, all these targets.
Well, it may not have been the Davos event we're used to. World leaders and financial heavyweights weren't trudging through the snow to get front row seats at each special address. But in online forums, they managed to get to the nub of their big concerns and priorities. Here's what some of those leading voices had to say at the Davos Agenda 2021.
Despite the trillions of dollars in relief packages worldwide, global recovery is rather shaky, and the outlook remains uncertain. We need to focus on current priorities and balance COVID response and economic development.
When public health issues become politically charged, like wearing a mask or not becomes a political statement, you cannot imagine how destructive that is to any unified public health message.
At AstraZeneca, we decided to provide this vaccine to everybody around the world at no profit and as quickly as possible, so that we could stop the virus from spreading and potentially mutating and returning to the rich countries.
Financial means, funds are one thing, but in these times of scarcity, obviously the fact whether one actually has a vaccine is also of the essence. And this is all about fair distribution, not only about money.
It is a moral duty to treat the vaccine as a global public good that ensures that low-income and poor countries are not left at the end of the waiting line.
The situation might develop unpredictably and uncontrollably if we will sit on our hands doing nothing to avoid it. And there is a possibility that we may experience an actual collapse of global development that might result in a fight of all against all.
So far, only 2 made-in-India corona vaccines have been introduced to the world. In the near future, many more such vaccines will be made available from India. These vaccines will help us in assisting countries across the world.
We rejoin the international climate effort with humility, and I mean that, and ambition. Humility because we know we've wasted 4 years in which we were inexcusably absent. Humility knowing that today almost no country, and for certain no continent, is getting the job done.
When the U.S. decided to leave the Paris Agreement in the summer of 2017, there was a major risk. But I see that over the last few years since, the House of Cards did not crumble.
We need to contain this immense power of the big digital companies. We want it clearly laid down that Internet companies take responsibility for the manner in which they disseminate, promote, and remove content.